Okay, so good morning, all the students. Good morning, Viraj. Good morning, Devendra, and the project coordinators. So today we will be discussing about some topics in science and how scientific knowledge and innovation can help change the society. So the students here, let me first introduce you to Viraj. Mr. Viraj Agnihotri was one of my college mate, and let me first introduce myself also, because you might not be aware who am I. So I will be your academic manager. All the students, I'll be your academic manager for the next session. And we will be having a very wonderful academic session. We will be studying a lot of physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics, and the tests, module test, part test, and full syllabus test. All of these things will be organized this year. So just like before, and we are very excited to see a huge response in Manipur. A lot of students from Manipur, they are connecting with us, and they want to pursue their career in science. So today we have a lot of students here who are going to face the interviews, Viraj. So these students, they are going to face the interviews, and then out of these students, we will select 30 students for our batch. So we have all of these students here who will be listening to your talk. And so now over to you, Viraj.
Okay, thanks, Vishal, and thanks for everyone to spend your time today. I'm going to give a brief introduction of myself, and then I've got a slide deck that I'll go through. So I'm Viraj. I met Vishal during my undergraduate studies. We're based at IIT Kanpur at that time. I studied bioengineering, and currently I'm based in Australia. So I'm based in Canberra. It's the capital of Australia. I've sort of have had about 15 years since the time I was at the same stage of life as most of you would be. And based on that, I've sort of tried to compile some of my learnings over the years to help you guys see a roadmap in front of you. Now I'm just going to share my screen, and then let's get into the topic. Vishal told me that many of you are looking at sort of medical profession for studying. So that's something that I've tailored the talk to. Vishal, can you confirm if the slides are moving for you guys?
Yes, Viraj.
Yes. Okay. So the topic I'm mostly going to cover is technology translation. And what I've also tried to do here is highlight a lot of different careers in this sector broadly, which is innovation. Because you guys would be, you're pre-college right now, pre-university, and the reality is some of you might get what you want, some of you may not get what you want, and you may have some anxieties about not getting what you want. But if there's something that I want you guys to take away from today, is like the world is so much bigger than you think right now, and there's so many opportunities out there. So I'm hoping that I could sort of give you a glimpse on those opportunities in the next 30 or so minutes that we've got. So I, reflecting back when I was in your stage of life, there's sort of three main motivations that we all have. One is finances. So we want to be, financially secure for ourselves, for our families. We also want to have some sort of impact. For if you're looking at medical professionals, a lot of that is it's health impact. It could be broader societal impact as well. And then we're all generally interested in science. And different people will have different varying levels of these motivators. But all of these will then form into what becomes your career moving forward. The other two factors that would heavily influence your career is your knowledge and your experience. So your degree, let's say, what you study, and then what your experiences are. Now, a college degree in general will give you two things. One, it will give you a domain specific know-how. So that would be the courses that you study. You'll learn subjects, biology, biomedical sciences, could be material sciences, physics, things like that. Um, and then it's also going to give you hard skills. So if you're looking at becoming a doctor, things like surgery, diagnosis, things like that. You can become an engineer. You can be just a scientist, so you'll have analytical skills. So these two categories is what you get from a college education. But then there's also a bigger part in life, that you sort of just get from interacting with people. One is your network that you're going to build over the next almost 20 years of your life. So as people say, it's not what you know, it's who you know. So that will form a very critical part of your career trajectory. Your soft skills, how you talk with other people, people above you in the hierarchy, people below you in the hierarchy, people opposite, sitting opposite you in, let's say, a negotiation or a deal. A lot of that would influence how you go forward. How do you manage resources? So your time, your energy, how do you use tools, especially with the advent of AI? And then what drives you? What's your North Star? So I almost think there are two types of people. There's one that are purpose driven, and there's the others which are opportunity driven. And unless you find your purpose, you should be finding opportunities till you find a clear purpose. Now, the theme for today, you'll see that it's not just your knowledge and hard skill that matters. It's really a combination of all of these that will shape different career trajectories. And as you'll grow in life, it'll actually be more leaning towards the right here. You'll rely less and less on what you studied, and sort of move more towards your softer skills, your knowledge. Just give me a second. My bell is ringing. I'll be back in 2 seconds.
Okay, so just to introduce more about Viraj. So Viraj is a musician also, and when we were in college, I was also playing guitar, and Viraj was very much interested in drums. So he is a kind of individual who will try to learn, try to take new challenges, and we tried to learn a lot of interesting progressive music also during the college. So that was very fun, and so I wanted to also talk about this thing which Viraj is talking about, that instead of knowledge, you also need to have these other kind of skills which he is talking about, which will very much help you to shape your career. Over to you, Viraj, now.
Yeah, thanks, Vishal. So one of the questions that is like, why should you listen to me? One, as I've said, I've had about 15 years to reflect on, like from where I was at the time I was your age, in the same phase of life. The other thing was I was motivated by the exact same factors, and I sort of worked on those as well. I sort of put my money where my mind was, in a way. So I did bioengineering, as I've said before, and the way I used to think at the time, and it's a bit of a naive thought process, but if the human machinery is like a car, I saw doctors as more like mechanics. There's nobody who was engineer in the sense that you make an entire car, as engineers do, for the human body. It's the nature, it's just life itself. But as biological engineers, we can start to now make spare parts, parts of it. And I did that. So the image I've got here is for a cartilage in the knee. And this is an area when you have osteoarthritis, you can't regrow naturally. So we built, this was my fourth year project, one of the two fourth year projects that we actually built this cartilage. But my main drive, as Vishal said, I was really into music. My main purpose that I defined at the end of my undergrad was how can I give the gift of sound to people who cannot hear. So I went on this journey of making this medical device. So it's not a hearing aid. Hearing aids are usually for hard of hearing people. They can still hear things. When you've gone completely deaf, you need what's called a cochlear implant. So you need a whole surgery. The doctor drills inside your head. They put this implant near your hearing nerve. The whole thing cost more than 25 lakh rupees, and this was, pre-COVID, so it's probably definitely a lot more now. And it's virtually unaffordable. So 99% of people who need an implant don't have one. And we figured if we can get the surgery out of the way, if we can make a device that can wirelessly stimulate the hearing nerve of the person and make them hear again, that would be an absolute game changer for this patient group. So I actually went on a whole journey. I started my company, I raised money, I got proof of principle. So these are simulations in a human that it can work. And then we also did some animal trials. This was an actual physical prototype that we built, but this was 30 kilograms in weight. And miniaturizing this to this concept almost seemed impossible. And we were also in the middle of the pandemic. There are a lot of factors that sort of led us to stop there, but I'm really proud of the time I spent in actually attempting this itself. The other reason I think you should sort of listen to me is I've been fortunate in my current job to have extreme breadth of experience with all types of technology sectors. So my job is called it's called technology translation or commercialization. So my job is essentially to get ideas from labs to market. So commercialization literally means turning something into commerce. So how do you convert innovations or early ideas into actual products and services that sell at large scale? So that's what my job is. I've been doing this for past 4 years now. I've done solar cells, hydrogen, desalination technologies, a lot of material, sustainable material composition. So how can you use waste material to make different things? There's an infinite recycling technology from the university, atomic sensors, quantum communication, mining minerals, AI for RNA design, um, pharmaceuticals for animals, and then also medical devices. So the principles we'll talk about sort of today span all of these sectors. Virtually, you can pick any sector. So again, like I've focused it more on life sciences with the mindset that many of you would be looking to become a doctor. But even if you're doing engineering, this applies equally well there. So going into the actual meat of the presentation, this is what I've from all the experience I've got. This is how I would define innovation works in our society. So you've got society here, which will actually pass on its problems, and it will pass on money through commerce or to tax to either public or private organizations. So that could be a government, that could be a large companies, producers of things, and they can't solve that problem themselves. So what they'll really do is they'll set up these priority areas, and then they'll open up these research grants for universities or other research institutions to actually develop, create knowledge and try to solve that problem. And these problems could be in any sector. It doesn't have to be, STEM. It could be in social integration. It could be in policy. It could be in any sort of domain as well. And then the R&D happens at the university, and then the university sort of needs to then transfer that know-how and give that technology back to these companies / government so they can implement policies, goods, and services. And it's that actually drives the impact and solves the problems that sort of came in society in the first place. So that's the whole cycle that we're going to look at. And as I've said, I've taken an example of a pharmaceutical drug, so a new medicine molecule as an example. The other thing to keep in mind is we use this scale, which is sort of called the technology readiness ladder, and the other one is next to that is a commercial readiness ladder. And it's very simple in terms of imagining. You don't have to go through all the steps. TRL 0 is something that's just an idea in someone's head, and TRL 9 is a product that's on a shelf, like something that you can buy. And commercial readiness, CRL 1 is something that you think someone might buy, and versus CRL6 is something that's really a bankable product, something like an iPhone, for example, that you know is going to just sell. So essentially, the innovation journey is about getting the hair from TRL0 to this CRL6 or so. Now, we'll go through different stages on this, and what I've done is I've sort of taken what kind of careers you can have, keeping in mind that the base knowledge is sort of similar for all of these jobs, all of these careers. It's not just yeah. So you can have a biomedical science background, and you can do all of these jobs virtually anywhere in the world. um, it's very translatable. So the first one we'd look at, and where it really starts and it forms the backbone of the whole innovation ecosystem in our society, is government policies and the research funding, like grant structures. So in government, you'll have these agencies slash research councils that are going to allocate budget for research and innovation in universities for grants, and they'll have policy advisors. So there'll be actual group of people who would understand a little bit of medicine, for example. They'd understand this technology translation process, and they would be advising the government on what types of grants you should have. So this is even before research starts. When you're looking at pharmaceuticals specifically, the TRL1 is your principles observed, basic principles. So you might look at a cell, and it's a disease cell. It might have the disease that you're trying to investigate, and then you try to identify what's exactly happening, like what molecules are going where, like what's the process that looks different from a healthy cell. So you try to identify the mechanisms in the cell behind that disease, and the careers there are basically fundamental researchers. So this is a group of researchers that are generating knowledge. They don't care about actually making medicine, producing pharmaceuticals, selling to patients, all of that. All they want to know is how does the cell work, how is the disease actually happening, because if they don't do that work, none of the following things are going to happen. The next step is also with the same group of people, but then they start to then narrow down and maybe identify certain proteins or biological machinery that's really putting and that's really being impacted in that particular disease. So where in these both these segments, you can have people who are studying immunology as an example. You could have neuroscientists who are trying to understand dementia, Alzheimer's. So people who are really trying to identifying the mechanisms behind disease. Now once you have a protein, so you've got some concept then, essentially. So if you start looking at the headings, one, you've got a basic principle, then you've got some sort of technology concept formulated, that okay, if I maybe block this protein, or if I overactivate it or whatever, then that's going to solve the problem. So you've got some sort of concept there. The next step is to actually try something. This is proof of principle, proof of concept. So for pharmaceutical, you'll start then designing molecules. You test different types of molecules that might bind to your protein, and it's called, you'll have a whole assay of different types of variations of those molecules. You're going to test that, and some of the careers there. So this will happen at both research institutions and private labs. And you can be a biomolecular chemist, and you can also, other names could be applied scientists in this context. The next step is sort of, a model organism, or, an actual real world testing of that. So as of now, animals are still the model for testing. Our computational science is not as advanced that we can just test something, and people are generally considered more important than animals in terms of safety. So we still use animals, but then there's a whole field here where you can go into ethics of these studies. So all of these studies require ethics approval to make sure the animals are handled humanely, they're handled well. And generally, people who would do experiments in this segment would be called translational scientists. The next one in terms of pharmaceuticals is actually seeing, how this molecule then can become an actual pill, let's say, or an injection. How can it be produced reliably, consistently? Because you want to start that testing that in actual people. So you want to make sure that composition is stable. You can make that reliably. It's the same across different people. And this is sort of the stage where people would start a company, and you'd have startups in this space. You'll need to have contract manufacturers and also investors. Now, the interesting thing I've seen here is I've seen doctors who've become founders. So they've actually started companies because they're really passionate about getting that particular solution out there. And it's not just pharmaceuticals, they could be in medical devices as well. And I've also seen doctors become investors, so venture capital investors. So these are companies that manage huge pools of money and then they deploy that into other startups. And they almost need that medical knowledge to be able to judge which drugs are going to work, what challenges they're going to have, what's the likelihood of them getting absorbed by the market, and things like that. And then you also have a sort of adjacent field of biochemical engineers who would actually design the plants and reactors where these things would be built. Next, you'll actually start having the clinical trial. Then there's phase 1, 2, 3, 4 different phases that you've got in pharmaceuticals. In medical devices, you'll have something like a pilot trial or pivotal trial. And if you're talking about something, completely non-medical, something like an energy system, so you might have a solar cell innovation. This is the stage where you'll have like a pilot plant, so something the size of a small warehouse or a big house, for example, that you try a whole system in the real world, as an example. In so relevant environment, so demonstration of the prototype in relevant environment. There's a bunch of people who work in this stage of the innovation. So you'll have what's called a clinician scientist. So a clinician scientist is a hybrid of a doctor and a scientist, where they essentially do these clinical research. So they test different things with small patient groups to see what might work, what might not work. They are treating the patients, but they're also experimenting and trying to invent new things. You have this whole suite of companies that essentially design these clinical trials. So how many patients do you need? What would be the dosage? What should be your control group? So control group is essentially a comparator group that gets a fake medicine, so that it's not psychological, that just because you're getting a medicine, that sometimes the body just heals itself. It's called the placebo effect. So all of these things, and then you have biostatisticians that would actually analyze the data you get from these trials. You also have these group of people called regulatory strategy consultants. So or any drug would need government approval before it can be sold. And there are this whole bunch of consultants who actually help you collect this data in a way that would be admissible to the government, before you have to, unless, and if you don't get it right, you almost have to do it again. And it's very, very costly, like millions of dollars. So there's a whole group of people who just do this. Um, Phase two would essentially be almost the same thing, but in a much larger group of population. So the key difference is phase one is safety testing. So you basically test different doses and to see how much, if there's any adverse effect of that medicine on a person. And phase two is where you're actually checking whether this works. So phase two is for efficacy, like is this effective in actually treating the disease or not? And then you have a very large percentage of a population, so you can actually get data on how different individual variations would impact the outcome of the drug, as an example. Same group of professions here. Phase three is when sort of almost on the market, more people. That's where you start to actually register the drug with the government. So in the US, and you might have heard this term called FDA, as the Food and Drug Administration. That's the regulatory body. I think in India it's ICF, Indian Council of Medical Research, ICMR. So essentially a government body. Now, these government bodies will also need people who actually understand how the body works, what the data is. Is it actually robust enough? Is it safe for the broader population in that country to administer that disease? And the biggest example we found for that is the COVID vaccines, because these government authorities had to work in overtime to actually figure out if these drugs were safe or not, to actually and weigh the risks versus benefits of getting these and getting these out in the market. um, and then again, so you've got the flip side. So on one side, you've got the government jobs where the government sort of regulating these drugs. And on the other side, you've got private consultants who are helping companies navigate this government process as well. And that's the stage after which you get the drug into your, into the market. That's where your hospital will come. That's where your doctors will come. Hospital administrators, believe it or not, are a very important part of this process, because sometimes hospitals have certain amount of funding. At least in sort of Western countries, the hospital will need to decide which drug to put on their list or not. They get, so for example, you might be competing with someone like Johnson and Johnson or Pfizer, who's basically given bulk discounts across all of their drugs in all disease sectors to these hospitals. Whereas as an individual, you've got one drug for one disease, which might be better than Pfizer's drug for that disease. But because you've got all of this, bulk discounts, it's challenging. So hospital administrators need to be sort of dealt with, and then you've got sales reps. The last part of this ecosystem is once you've gotten the products, you actually see how they're working in a much, much bigger population. So this is out in the real world, and that's what's called phase 4. And that's where you start to really look at, okay, can the government subsidize or pay for this drug? The US and has this Medicare, so that's what's called reimbursement. So you'll have again policy advisors on the government that need to look at that, lobbyists. So coming back to those interpersonal skills, those soft skills, there's a group of people whose whole job is to understand all of this and try to convince the government to subsidize a particular medicine, because if the government doesn't subsidize this medicine, it almost never gets sold because it's prohibitively expensive, and it actually doesn't reach the patients. So it's a very interesting sort of bunch of people that you've got there. You've also got this thing called health economics. So at this stage, you sort of measure the economic impact of that disease versus the economic impact of having this medicine, having this treatment, because that's what then you give to the government, that your economy is being costed XYZ dollars because this group of population is not productive because of the disease. As a result of our drug, this population becomes productive again. So it's things like that. So health economics is a whole theory by itself. Now, this is fine and good. Like it's a very linear process. I want to give you some examples, and it's an interesting thing because there's no contest that doctors are extremely impactful. They're like extremely essential for society. But I want to think about innovators as well as a sort of parallel career stream. So these two are Australian examples where I live right now. We have a researcher who made a vaccine for cervical cancer. There's basically no case of cervical cancer in Australia now because they've implemented it into their policy. They get routine checks. It's basically cured that disease in Australia. Has made millions of dollars, by the way, from sales of those drugs. But essentially, his reach as an individual has been like extraordinary because he's made that actual solution that the doctors would then prescribe to their patients. Cochlear implant. So this is the current implants that I was trying to replace with my device. Again, millions of people who could never hear start hearing again. Syngenta is another example because when you study life sciences, it's not just about human biology or animal biology. You can do plant biology as well. So Syngenta is a company that invented a new type of rice called golden rice. which expressed vitamin A molecules in the rice. As a result, this one invention has cured vitamin A deficiency in 17 countries of the world. Can you imagine the scale of that impact? um so that's again, there's so many ways that you can have an actual impact with science and have the financial backing for that. So again, I want to tie this back to the initial motivators. um and now there's a whole new breed of career pathways with the intersection of AI and medicine. This company, as an example, is the first one to have a completely AI designed drug into phase 1 of clinical trials. They've also built models to sort of replace animal trials, things like that. So there's a lot of interface with computational biology there as well. Um, Again, coming back to this, so this is a long process, and there'll be jobs pretty much everywhere. The key thing is that impact can happen in a whole range of ways. So you can, depending on where you go, there's a lot of different career pathways for you. Um, i think the key is to be consistent. You might get into the college you want, you may not get into it, but as long as you stay consistent, it won't even matter, quite frankly. Like, 15 years from that time, even 10 years, I would say, it doesn't even matter like what college you studied. If you stayed consistent, if you stayed driven, if you've had sort of a, if you've been following that north star, you've been improving yourself, it won't matter. So I want you guys, if there's any anxiety in any of you, I want you to just keep that at rest. The world's a lot bigger than you might be aware of at the moment. And there's so much possibility. You can write your own story. That's about it from me. Over to you, Vishal. You want to ask some questions, maybe have a conversation? Happy to do that.
Yes, Viraj, it was very nice to look at all of these ideas put together in such a structured way. Like students can now realize that there are so many possibilities because in India, usually people are the parents and students. They are mostly thinking about becoming an engineer or a doctor. But we see that there are limited number of seats and a lot of competition in India. So last year also we kind of had sessions in which we would talk about all these kind of opportunities with the student that they could go into different kinds of field. So there is a CUET examination also in India at undergraduate level, in which there are many different kinds of fields in which students can go and pursue their career. So the important thing is, like, when they prepare for these examinations, they get a lot of stress about a particular kind of exam, and that stress actually, it helps them, it does not help them to perform good. It is actually not required, I would say. If we remove all the stress, then I think the productivity and the kind of understanding of science will also improve. So yes, I would like to encourage students also to talk about talk with Viraj sir, whatever you want to talk about, like what you want to become and how do you want to shape your career. So we have 15 minutes of time. So I would encourage students to interact. A few students were raising their hands, so I did not respond because the talk was going on. So if anybody wants to ask any question, feel free. Okay, so I think this is a very new kind of thing which the students are experiencing, because usually there is like TV series and movies through which they come to know about these kind of things. And this is something which is being shared here, is something which is about the real world, how it functions, how science, you can, using science, you can create technologies and translate technologies. Becoming just like a simple surgeon or a doctor, even if you become like that, then you will be aware of so many things on the background which is happening, and then you can also opt to change your career. You can, if you want to make money also, Viraj was talking about that also, millions of dollars of money involved if you have an idea which can function properly in that scheme. So that map of thing, uh, we will ask with our uh, participants, interviewers in the interview round. There is an interview observer also. So we will be asking about what did you learn from this talk, and you can feel free to speak about whatever you learned. Okay. The first thing is that because the students are going to face this interview, you might be in stress. So right now also you realize that the stress is not important for me. The world is huge and it works in a structured way, and I need to figure out my path in career slowly. And for to begin with, you should be able to express yourself. And these interviews, which we are going to take now, in that I would request the students to express themselves completely without any fear. So this is not for judging you guys in terms of subject knowledge, because subject knowledge is just a part of all this career process which Viraj was talking about. Subject knowledge is there, required definitely, but at the same time, what is your motivation? Why you are trying to become to clear this NEET examination? Why you want to become a doctor? What kind of doctor you want to become? What kind of visualization you have in your head? So all of these things also, if you share with the panelist in your interviews, so you will benefit a lot. You will get good marks for that. So
Yeah, I think
that is it.
on this, yeah, on the stress side, and there's like two analogies on that, which basically say the same thing. You want to be stressed enough that you want yourself to be driven, but not too much. So I'm going to go back to guitar example. If Vishal plays a guitar, if you've got a guitar string, and if you make it too loose, it's going to play the wrong note. It's never going to get the right note that it's supposed to, do. And if you tighten it too much, it's going to break. So you need to find that right tension. It's different for everybody. Some people thrive in high tension, and that would be the high note strings in the guitar. But they're also the low note strings. So different people will have different levels of tolerance to that stress and how they respond to it and how they use it for motivation. Some people get completely discouraged with stress. And you may not, I think the other thing for you guys to know that is you will not always find a teacher who responds to your needs of stress. So when I was preparing for JEE, I had a teacher who used to challenge the class quite a lot, and used to make fun of kids who would not perform. For some kids, that worked because they would go like, I'm going to beat this guy. I'm actually going to study more and go answer this question. But then for the other students, the same teacher was just too much to handle. So you guys are going to face that same thing, and it's going to continue in all aspects of your life later down. So I think that the key skill there to master is take only as much stress as you can handle, just enough. And the other thing that this so the other analogy is it's called a flow state. So if you Google what a flow state is, a flow state is where you really perform to your best. And a flow state is achieved when you're doing something that is just challenging enough beyond your current skill set, not too much. So you just sort of pushing yourself a little bit, and that's the right amount of tension on that guitar string that gets you in that flow state. So use stress, but also just remove stress where you think so. And it's going to be difficult to get that because you've got deadlines and exams and all of that. The whole um, the whole country is so populated, and there's a lot of stress on you guys at this stage of life. But as I said, it really doesn't matter. Looking back, it will not matter at all, really, where you study. I went into IIT, yes, but I also have colleagues from India doing the exact same job who didn't go into IIT. So I know for a fact it equates. You can, if you don't get somewhere, you can just push more later down the line. So consistency again is the key. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Don't burn yourself out.
Yeah. So students are can feel free to ask anything. You see, we are not trying to put a lot of burden on you because we conceive this organization. They are be very different from the kind of coaching institutions which you have seen. Um, Conventionally what kind of education is happening. We encourage, like, when you become a part of the batch, then when you reach the center, you talk more about science, you think more logically, and then you express all your doubts to the teachers and the academic officers also there. They are from NITs and IITs. So with the staff members also you can discuss. So the more you discuss science, the more you discuss the real aspects, not the emotional aspects of career. The real aspects, how it is going to actually work. The more you will realize your goal faster. So, any questions, anyone, please?
I had a hand up, but then it went down. Um, if you want to raise your hand again, that's okay. We're not going to bite you. Um, there we go.
Hello. Hello, sir.
Yes,
Am I audible, sir? Sir,
yes, you are.
sir, actually, I wanted to ask you about consistency, sir. Sir, uh, we face some problems in consistency. Like, suppose I'm studying a subject, and for 1 to 3 days, like I'm consistent, and because I understand the things which I read, but uh, suddenly, when I find a topic which I can't understand, then my interest and my consistency breaks, sir. So, what shall I do for this?
Very, very good question. And so you're getting a momentum on this on a subject. You get this um, just get a big roadblock, and then you just get disheartened on how do you actually surpass that roadblock. Um, there's a few things, right? So one is to circle back on that. Your brain actually works really well in processing problems in the background, and that is why people sort of say they get epiphanies in the shower, or during walks, during exercises and things like that, because your subconscious is still trying to solve that problem. I think for what you're doing right now, just move to the next subject. Like you have multiple subjects, move across, spend some effort, keep that momentum going, try to get it in the other subject, and really ask your teacher. I think just be unapologetic about getting time from your teachers at this stage. Doesn't matter if it you know if it's out of the class, it's their time. I remember I used to just, and it's probably not a good thing to do, but I used to keep asking that question in the class even, until I got a clarity on what where I was getting wrong. And 9 times out of 10, you'll have other students in the class having the exact same problem. So um, don't get competitive in that moment. That's not the time to get competitive. Ask questions in the class, note down, share your approach with your teacher, discuss it with your friends as well. Maybe some of your friends would have solved it in a different way. Often you're trying to take a particular path that you're getting stuck on, and you fail to see the other way to do the same thing. So getting out of that situation is literally the only way you can get through that. So you need to get out of your own way, and try to get others perspectives on that situation. So yeah, and as I said, for the momentum, just keep it going. Switch your subject. You'll have like 3 subjects at least. For any entrance type of entrance exam, you can just switch between that. And sometimes you'll find, back of the mind, your answer will come automatically because your brain's still thinking about it. But that being said, these problems will happen at a much larger scale moving forward as well. So the best, again, the I think the actionable method to solve this is to ask for help.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Now we have Ramuel Tanti who raised their hand. So please, Ramuel.
हेलो सर. सो माय डाउट वाज कि मतलब कैन आई स्पीक इन हिंदी सर?
Yes, of course, yes.
सर मेरा डाउट ये था कि सर मतलब हम एक साल तो मतलब 12th पास आउट है इस बार, तो उतना प्रिपरेशन हमारा हुआ नहीं सर. मतलब पूरा जी जान लगा है, लेकिन लास्ट में क्या हुआ सर कि मतलब कुछ ऐसा चीज हुआ हमारे साथ कि मतलब हम पूरा मतलब जितना ऊपर था मतलब हमको लगा था कॉन्फिडेंस था, लेकिन अचानक से गिर गया सर. कि मतलब हम चाहते हैं कि ये एक साल में जो नेक्स्ट ईयर है इसमें हम कौन सा चीज रखें कि जितना भी मतलब मुसीबतें आए हम वो मेंटेन रहे कॉन्फिडेंस सर. यही हमको मतलब.
आई थिंक हाँ, तो एक तो अपने आप पे इतना प्रेशर मत डालो. मतलब जैसे हम विशाल के साथ भी बात कर रहे थे कि अपने आप पे आप प्रेशर जितना डालोगे उतना आपका परफॉर्मेंस वाली बात आती है. बाकी मतलब वैसे मैं इतना क्रिकेट देखता नहीं, बट विराट कोहली भी मैच में खराब कर जाता है. तो ऐसी कोई मतलब बड़े से बड़े एथलीट्स भी जरूरी नहीं है हर बार हर मोमेंट पे परफॉर्म करेंगे. तो अगेन मेरा पॉइंट पूरी प्रेजेंटेशन में यही था कि इट्स नॉट द एंड ऑफ द वर्ल्ड. मतलब दुनिया नहीं खत्म होगी अगर आपको वो पर्टिकुलर इंस्टीट्यूट नहीं मिला या आपको वो पर्टिकुलर सब्जेक्ट या कोर्स नहीं मिला. बहुत 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 लंबी है आगे, बहुत लंबा टाइमलाइन है. तो इस सिचुएशन में जितना कम प्रेशर आप अपने आप पे डालोगे उतना बेटर परफॉर्मेंस होती है. स्पोर्ट्स में भी, स्विमिंग में ये एग्जांपल होता है कि आप जितना हार्ड करोगे ट्राई तैरने का उतना आप स्लो होते हो. आपको आपको अपना बैलेंस फाइंड करना पड़ेगा कि आप कैसे किस लेवल ऑफ स्ट्रेस में परफॉर्म करते हो. और अगर आपको स्ट्रेस ज्यादा हो रहा है ना, तो जस्ट रिमूव योर सेल्फ फ्रॉम दैट सिचुएशन. कोई मतलब नहीं है. मेरे एग्जाम्पल में मैं बताऊंगा. मैं फिटजी में था. फिटजी करके कोचिंग इंस्टीट्यूट है. उसमें उन्होंने ग्रूमिंग बैच शुरू कर दिया था टुवर्ड्स द एंड. 12th में था तो 11th में बढ़िया चल रहा था मेरा. फिर ये ग्रूमिंग बैच हुआ जिसमें टॉप 15 बच्चे डाल दिए उन्होंने, तो मेरे को भी डाल दिया. और ग्रूमिंग बैच में उन्होंने ऐसे ऐसे सवाल पूछने शुरू कर दिए जो कोई मतलब ही नहीं समझ आ रहा था मेरे को कि ये क्यों ही हो रहा है. और अच्छी वाली परफॉर्मेंस थी मेरे उससे. ग्रूमिंग बैच में जाने के बाद मेरी परफॉर्मेंस गिर गई क्योंकि अननेसेसरी स्ट्रेस आया. तो मैंने उस पॉइंट के बाद मैं ग्रूमिंग बैच की क्लास में ही नहीं गया. और मेरे को कोई नेट मुझे लगता है कुछ ज्यादा फर्क पड़ा क्योंकि मैं अपना स्ट्रेस, कोचिंग इंस्टीट्यूट्स कभी कभी आपको ओवर प्रिपेयर भी करते हैं. तो आप और आप ये भी देखो कि जो एग्जाम है ना, आई थिंक दैट्स द अदर थिंग कि एग्जाम देना इटसेल्फ एक आर्ट है. तो आपको चूज करने, क्वेश्चंस आंसर करने. एक मुश्किल क्वेश्चन के भी उतने ही मार्क्स होंगे और सिंपल क्वेश्चन के भी उतने ही मार्क्स होंगे. आपका काम है मार्क्स ज्यादा लाना. आपका काम ये नहीं है कि आप डिफिकल्ट क्वेश्चन सारे सॉल्व करो. तो थोड़ा सा स्ट्रेटेजिकली आप पेपर में जब आप जाते हो तो अगेन इट्स द सेम थीम ऑफ choosing your battles and trying to customize the stress that you're getting. तो be a bit more strategic about it. बाकी कोई दुनिया का अंत नहीं है कि अगर आपको जो कॉलेज में जाना चाह रहे हो वो नहीं मिला, आप ड्रॉप एक साल आपने लिया है तो आप अच्छे से मेहनत करो. बट जो भी होता है आगे बहुत बहुत लंबी जर्नी है सीरियसली. मतलब कंसिस्टेंसी की बात जो मैं कर रहा हूँ वो डेज में नहीं कर रहा. मैं कंसिस्टेंसी बात कर रहा हूँ डेकेड्स में. तो आपको डेकेड्स में कंसिस्टेंट रहना पड़ता है और वो शाइन करता है. मतलब आप जैसे आप कोई भी स्पोर्ट्स भी ले लो, कोई 1-2 साल कोई क्रिकेट खेल के नहीं चला जाएगा इंडियन टीम में. वो लगे हुए रहते हैं, वो जिंदगी भर लगे रहते हैं वो. तो तब जाके वो इतना एक्सेल होते हैं. तो इट्स द सेम थिंग. आपको अगर कोई करियर अचीव करना है आप लगे रहो. बहुत सारे रूट्स होते हैं. आई नो इंडिया में एटलीस्ट मेडिसिन का बहुत रिजिड वो होता है कि आप आपका सर्टेन नंबर ऑफ इंस्टीट्यूट्स में नहीं हुआ तो आप डॉक्टर नहीं बन सकते. नहीं बने तो नहीं बने, कोई बात नहीं. मतलब मैं again I can give you examples where people have made more money than doctors. People have treated more people than doctors have, and have lived very fulfilling lives as well. Doctors also have a very difficult life. So doesn't matter. तो जितना अपने आप पे कम प्रेशर आप देंगे उतना आपको वो फाइंड करना पड़ेगा अपना आप किस प्रेशर में बेस्ट परफॉर्म करते हो. और अगर ज्यादा स्ट्रेसफुल लग रही है सिचुएशन की, परफॉर्मेंस गिर रही है क्योंकि आप स्ट्रेस ले रहे हो, just remove yourself from that situation. Doesn't matter.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so we have 8 more minutes before we conclude this meeting. So anybody else?
And it's possible कि मतलब मैं जो बोल रहा हूँ या what I'm saying, people might not resonate with that because you've got a very focused mindset of getting this, like a medical entrance exam, and anybody who's deviating you from that path might not get through to you. That's also okay because you've got a very clear purpose. But just keep in mind that the world is much bigger than what you're looking at right now. The thing with being focused is you miss everything else. So again, the purpose of my time today is really for you guys to know and be assured that there will always be opportunity for you, as long as you guys stay consistent, again, over years, decades, not just days or months. It's not that abhi pad lo aur fir enjoy kar lena life college jaake. That's a very bad advice. I actually followed that. It was not a good thing to do. So it's a very long term thing. And also don't think of it as a race. People say lambi race hai. It's not a race. You're not really competing with anybody else. Your objective is to make the most of your life. That should be it. Doesn't matter what other people are doing. There will always be people who are good, better than you at something or the other. Just try to make the best of your life, of your ability, and try to always grow. Try to make yourself better. Apne aap everything will sort of unlock. Just you automatically unlock pathways. And the other thing is luck favors the prepared. So as long as you're doing your right thing, when there will be an opportunity that knocks on your door, if you're prepared, if you've done your homework, you will get that. So don't worry about that again. And this may be something that over only time. So there's also a difference between knowledge and understanding, like really knowing that. Us, me and Vishal, having lived through all these things, we sort of understand these things a little bit differently. But as long as there's a back voice in the back of your mind which says don't worry, there's other options as well which may be more promising. You never know, actually. Say just medical device sales reps make so much more money than actual medical device company CEOs as well. So it's a very interesting world out there. Don't worry about just one pathway that the world might be putting on you right now. Yeah, just keep exploring.
Yeah, and at this age when the students are trying to learn the basics of science, there can be a lot of interesting discussions, philosophically speaking also. And I remember my discussions with Viraj about the nature of mind. And I was studying philosophy because I was interested into that. I was also doing chemical engineering and Viraj was doing biotechnology. So he was working on his project. We were doing music together also. You see this, the brain is, I think it has infinite potential. If you want to do something, and if you have really a drive that you want to become like this, so you can do a lot of things together. And when you do a lot of things together, you have a vibrant life, you have a lot of experiences which you can use back in your academics also. And your insight towards science also develops. So any problem, if you want to understand in the, let's say, friction or Newton's laws of motion, and if you can see, if you can feel the chemistry behind it, like how these atoms are interacting and why this electromagnetic force is creating this kind of a drag, so then your understanding increases a lot. So physics is not separate from chemistry, and biology is also very much dependent on chemistry on the biomolecules. So one question was in the comments about the biotechnology courses. Can you tell us about biotechnology courses?
Yeah. So I mean, there's the fundamentals of biology that you learn. What's a cell? What does cell do? The difference between, I think, medical science and biotech is you don't study as much of things like anatomy, physiology, or organ systems, things like that. But you'd still sort of study, depending on the place, you might study neuroscience, you study biochemical engineering. So, a bit of interface between chemical engineering and biology. I studied biomechanics as was a subject, very useful in sports science, sports physiology, how the body's biomechanics works. Um, Information bioinformatics. Bioinformatics is basically the connection between information technology and biology. So you've got all these protein molecules, DNA molecules digitalized, and then you can use that to train AI, and you can invent medicines, you can simulate things. So bioinformatics is that sort of whole section there. I did tissue engineering. That was the main stream, and that's where I built those cartilage tissues. So that was so. And then there's also biomedical engineering in the sense of things like medical devices. So how do you, like, things like MRI, interaction of physics with the human body. And that's closer to what I was doing in my medical device startup. So if you're looking at devices, it's more on the interaction of physics with biology. You also have biophysics, which is almost at the molecular level. So how proteins are folding together, different shapes and things like that. Um, yeah, I might move to the next question in the chat. Just being mindful of the time. I can go for longer. Not sure about others. What is actually enough and sufficient for IIT JEE? I would say the IIT JEE is a lot more tangible and well defined than UPSC is. UPSC, I have the same question for UPSC. I've never given or prepared for UPSC, but I see my friends do that. The short answer is actually NCRT books. The people who design the question paper actually do that on the basis of NCRT books. So, all the physics, all the chemistry, all the maths you're going to get in the IIT paper is already in the NCRT books. It's then about how do you tackle difficult problems, and then how can you mix different concepts together to solve problems. So as an example, and I don't know, like, if you may have come across this, if you're looking at a rotating object, you use complex numbers for that. So you're using math subject to solve the physics problems. And there are other systems as well that you can model. There's this mathematical modeling concept, which would really be necessary for engineering. You need to understand systems as mathematical models, really. So they're testing your analytical skills. Did I answer all the questions in my JEE exam? Absolutely not. So I don't know what they wanted either. And every year question is different. The question, again, it shouldn't bother you too much. I had a friend who was really good during our coaching. He did not get into IITs. He just, that day, it was just a bad day for him. Did not perform well. He went to Punjab Engineering College. Then he went to an Ivy League university in New York because of consistency. And now he's just living the high life. Like, you see his photos, he's just traveling the world. He likes to spend money. I'm not a person like that. So, but that's what he wanted to do with his life. But not getting into IIT didn't make a difference, really, because he stayed consistent. So again, I want you guys to depressure yourself from this mindset that you can only succeed if you get in a particular institute. I live in Australia. No one cares what you studied, where you studied from. So this country really values experience. How well can you talk with others is actually the most important thing, that gives you success, because humans are social creature. It doesn't matter if you can solve an equation or not. If you can't be nice to other people, if you can't get other people to work with you, it doesn't matter what equation you can solve. So yeah, again, the world is really big. Don't worry too much. As far as JE is concerned, yeah, it is NCRT actually. Just be very clear with that. And again, it's more than anything, it's an exam. I have my younger brother's friend who did really well in both AIMS and IIT JE. He just loves giving exams. Like he just loves giving exams. That's his thing. He's really good at giving exams. And the whole Indian system right now is around giving exams. So it's people like that would benefit that. So it's not just about how well you know the subjects, how well you can solve a problem. It's how well you perform in those 3 to 6 hours. I don't know what the format is now. It's how well you perform, how strategically you address that question paper. So I think the other thing you should do is practice more papers rather than questions. We all just practice questions. We take our own time and we think that it's about solving questions. It is not about solving questions. It's about getting the maximum number of marks. So you want to tackle paper as a whole and not just individual questions, because that's what's going to happen when you go into that exam center. You're going to have this paper in front of you. Your job is to get as many marks as possible, and there is no second chance for many people. So learn the skill of giving an exam as well, on top of actually understanding the subject. I've been talking a lot now.
I feel very grateful, Vishal, that Viraj, that you could take out some time for these students and talk at a meta level, because at the center we are mostly talking about the exact procedures and the questions, and so we do not get a lot of time to interact with students at this level, so that we can make them feel that this is not that tough and there is a lot of opportunity, and if there is a lesser stress, the performance would be better. And when like in this question, I would like to say, when you go to give this examination and you are giving this test series also before, so you can get an idea like 1 week before also how much marks you are going to get, because we have the analytics also of the students, so we see like whatever they're performing in the test series, around that kind of marks they get, unless and until there is something special which happened on that day, and it was a bad day, or maybe it can also be a very good day sometime for some students, that whatever they prepared, the question is coming from there. So thank you so much, Viraj, for your time, and
Well, thank you for having me.
proceed for the interviews now. So all the best, students, best of luck for the interviews, and speak up, speak your mind. Yes, Viraj, you want to conclude?
Yeah, I mean, um, you've got you'll have obstacles in life. You won't get your way always. That's the reality. Like some people will get something, some people won't get something. But yeah, just stay consistent. Don't worry about short term thinking. Just go long term. Again, on IIT, like I recently we sold a technology from an Indian scientist for $3 million. He did not go to an IIT. I don't even know the college he went to. Like it just does not matter, really. So don't pressure yourself. You'll actually perform better if you don't pressure yourself. Don't go about wasting your time either. That's in nobody's interest. But yeah, just know that pressure is something that you control in your mind. So don't worry about things too much.
Thank you. Thank you, Viraj, so much. And now we will be concluding. Thank you.